All right, so we're diving into something a little different today. A story you might think you know, but we're going to find out there's a lot more to it. We're talking about a giant, a garden, and some kids.
Yeah, it sounds simple on the surface, right? But this story has really resonated with people for, well, for generations. And there's a reason for that. It touches on these big ideas about human nature, the world around us, maybe even something a little bit, well, almost spiritual.
Yeah, and from the beginning, the story pulls you in with this amazing garden. I mean, just picture this. Flowers everywhere, every color you can think of, fruit trees, just overflowing, and the sounds, birds singing, just beautiful.
Like a paradise, right? And the kids, they're there just playing and having a
I
blast.
think description is so important. It
Yeah.
creates this feeling of wonder and innocence. And, well, it kind of sets the stage for what happens next, what's at risk. And what happens is, then the giant shows up, he's been away, and when he sees the kids in his garden, he's not happy. Not happy at all. Kicks everyone out, builds a huge wall, and says, "This is my garden, nobody else's." It's like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah, it's jarring. It's a pretty clear picture of how fast selfishness can just, I don't know, take over and ruin something beautiful. But here's the thing, it's not just the kids that are affected.
You're talking about the winter, right? How it
Yeah.
descends on the garden.
Yeah.
But it's more than just cold weather. The story makes it seem like the elements themselves are almost characters.
Exactly.
Right.
You've got snow, frost, the north wind, hail. They all show up, and it's like they're working together to punish the giant for what he's done, turning the garden into this frozen wasteland.
Wow. So are you saying that our actions, like how we treat others, can actually have an impact on the natural world?
I think the story is suggesting that, when we close ourselves off, when we push people away, it creates a sort of spiritual winter, not just for us, but for everything around us. It's like the garden becomes a mirror of the giant's heart.
Okay, I get it. So he's built a wall around his heart, and now his garden is stuck in this perpetual winter.
Right, which is why when the giant hears that little linnet singing outside his window, it's so important. It's the first sign of life, a tiny bit of beauty breaking through all that gloom. And it's not random, it's a direct result of that tiny bird singing its heart out.
And that leads to the giant changing, right?
Yeah.
Not just the garden, but the giant himself. He sees the kids back in the garden. They found a hole in the wall, and something in him shifts. He realizes he's messed up, realizes all the joy he's been missing out on. And he decides to tear down the wall.
But it's more than just the physical wall, isn't it? It's like he's breaking down the walls he's built around his own heart. And that's where this little boy comes in, the one who can't reach the branches of the tree. He's kind of this symbol of vulnerability, a need for compassion that the giant is finally ready for.
When the giant helps him into the tree, it's like the whole garden comes back to life. The birds are singing, flowers are blooming, and then the boy kisses the giant on the cheek. Just this pure moment of gratitude, of love.
And I think it's important to notice the boy kisses the giant on the cheek. It's not romantic or anything, just this innocent, pure affection. It's like it represents a kind of healing, restoring the connection that was lost. That kiss, I mean, it really feels like a turning point for the giant, doesn't it? Like he's finally seeing the world in a new way.
Yeah, I think so. But then there's that little boy, he just disappears. And none of the other kids seem to know him. It's almost like he was, I don't know, some kind of vision or something.
Hmm, that's interesting. It kind of reminds me of this idea that runs through the whole story, these fleeting moments of like grace, and how they can have such a big impact on us even after they're gone. Like even though the giant never sees the boy again, that one encounter, it keeps shaping him.
And it's not like everything becomes perfect for him. Time goes on, he gets older, weaker, can't really play with the kids anymore. But he's still, well, his heart's still open, right?
Exactly. Just because his body's not what it used to be doesn't mean he can't feel love, can't feel joy. He finds a new way to connect with the kids, watching them, enjoying their laughter. He even calls them the most beautiful flowers of all, which says a lot about how much he's changed.
Yeah. And he doesn't hate winter anymore either. In the beginning, he seemed to, like, resent it. But now he sees it as just part of life.
I think that shows how much wiser he's gotten. Remember how winter was like almost a punishment for him before? Like those elements had it out for him. Now he understands that it's not about punishment. It's about rest, renewal. It's just part of the cycle.
It's like he's learned to accept everything, the good and the dark. And just when you think that's it for the story, something amazing happens.
One winter morning, the giant looks out his window and he sees something incredible. In the far corner of the garden, the same spot where he met the boy, there's this tree covered in blossoms. And right there, under the tree, It's the boy.
Wow. So in the middle of winter, this tree is in full bloom. That's quite an image.
Yeah, it really is. It's like a vision of hope, of new beginnings right in the middle of winter. But there's something different about the boy this time.
You're right. When the giant goes out to him, he sees wounds on the boy's hands and feet. And the story is pretty specific. It says they look like prints of 2 nails.
Yeah, you can't miss that. Definitely makes you think about something more, something deeper.
It's like the story is hinting at, I don't know, something almost religious. Sacrifice, maybe, redemption.
And remember what the giant asks the boy. Who are you? And the boy's answer. He says, you let me play in your garden once. Today you'll come with me to mine. And mine is paradise.
Paradise. Wow. So not just any garden.
Right. It seems like this boy is offering the giant something way beyond, anything in this world.
It's like this story has so many layers. It's a fairy tale, but it's also like an allegory, maybe even a parable about faith and spirituality.
Yeah, and it doesn't give us all the answers, does it? Like, what actually happens to the giant? Does he really go to paradise? We don't know for sure.
But the story does tell us that when the other kids find the giant later that day, he's dead, lying under that blossoming tree covered in white blossoms.
So even though we don't know exactly where he ends up, there's something about that image, the blossoming tree, the white blossoms, that suggests he's found peace, like he's been redeemed.
Yeah, I agree. It's like even in death, he's connected to that symbol of life and renewal. And those white blossoms, they usually represent purity, innocence. It all fits.
It's amazing, isn't it? This simple story, but there's so much to unpack. Love, forgiveness, spiritual transformation. It really makes you think.
It really does. It makes you think about, what's truly important in life. That image of the giant, at the end there, under the blossoming tree. It's really stuck with me. So much symbolism. Like there's a whole other layer to the story there.
Yeah, it's a powerful image. And I think you're right. It's key to understanding what the story is really about. We've been talking about the garden as this metaphor, right? First, it was like the giant's heart, all closed off and frozen. Then when the kids came back, it blossomed, showed his love, his generosity.
And now, even though he's dead, he's under this tree that's full of life.
Yeah.
In the middle of winter. It's like a statement about, I don't know, transformation, the power of love, even after death.
Exactly. It's like the giants come full circle, from being selfish and isolated to, well, completely surrendering to something bigger than himself. And that tree blossoming in winter, it's like a spiritual awakening, like he's overcome the limits of the physical world.
Makes you think about those walls we talked about, the ones we build around our own hearts. What's the story saying about breaking those down, even when it seems impossible?
I think that's the big question, isn't it? The giant, at first, he wouldn't share his garden. He was being selfish. And that's how we are sometimes, right? We isolate ourselves. Maybe because we're scared or insecure, or we just want to protect what we have.
Yeah, like we all build those walls sometimes, and we miss out on all the joy and connection that's out there.
But the story shows us those walls don't have to be permanent. The giant changed. He opened his heart, opened his garden. It proves that even the toughest heart can soften, that even the deepest wounds can heal.
And it wasn't like a one-time thing, right? It was a journey for him. He kept growing, kept changing.
Absolutely. Even when he was old, couldn't play anymore, his heart was still open. He found new ways to connect, new ways to find joy and love.
And what about that little boy? He's such a mysterious character. Does he represent something specific, or is he more like an archetype?
That's what's so great about this story. You can interpret it in different ways. I mean, the boy could be innocence, pure love and compassion. Or maybe with those wounds on his hands and feet, he's something divine, something beyond our understanding.
And when he invites the giant to paradise, that's a big deal, right? Like there's this possibility of spiritual redemption, of going beyond the physical world.
And the story doesn't spell it out for us, does it? We don't know for sure what happens to the giant. It's up to us to think about it, to come to our own conclusions.
So the story keeps going, even after we're done reading it.
Exactly. It makes you think, makes you reflect, explore your own capacity for love, forgiveness, transformation. I think that's what makes a story truly great, when it stays with you, keeps resonating.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap up our deep dive today. I mean, it leaves us with a lot to think about, doesn't it? What walls do we need to tear down in our own lives? What would it look like to really embrace everything, the good and the bad, the joy and the sorrow? And how can we open ourselves up to change, even when we feel limited? That's something to think about for sure. And hopefully this deep dive has given you some food for thought. Thanks for listening.